you thinking? What are the mechanics of this? What can you say about it?
So there's a lot of parts that I can relate to that I think you can make the argument that this is kind of an innocent thing, and I can relate to a lot of that. But there's other things in here that are kind of red flags. Okay. So let me explain a little bit. So I have a lot of female friends, and I communicate with them, text back and forth, but there are times in a relationship that can be a problem.
Sure.
The other part to this, too, is that when I was going through my divorce, there was a lot of people who came out of the woodwork to support me. You know, people who I didn't even realize I was that close of friends with, but, you know, they dropped everything to come out and help. And it was amazingly beneficial. I could not have gotten through that if it wasn't for this group of friends. And I realized that I'm never going to be able to pay them back for that. So I kind of made a commitment to myself that if I can't pay them back for what they did, then I'll pay it forward. So when I have a friend or a coworker or somebody who is going through something very difficult, I will, you know, be the support to that person that these other people were to me. That was kind of the commitment that I made, right? And so in doing that, I have had some friends who were going through some challenging times, and I made a really strong effort to be available and be supportive. But then there's that other part too, where you have to balance your regular life. And if you're in a relationship, you have to set some really clear boundaries. You know, a big thing is, you know, time of day. You know, if people are texting late at night, you know, and I'm in a relationship, if it makes my significant other uncomfortable, then I need to make that, you know, I have to be respectful of that. And I have to start setting some clear boundaries about, you know, what is okay and what isn't. And you can kind of do that by just not responding at certain times, you know. And it's hard sometimes to kind of find that balance between being helpful, being supportive, but yet still setting some clear boundaries.
Right.
There's a lot of things in here, though, that really...
red flags.
Yeah.
And one of the things I hear you saying is I kind of relate to the female in this one. I relate to the person who has, or no, the male. I relate as somebody who's had good connections with females, but it's honestly innocent. Even if I am talking to them quite a bit, it is innocent, but it can be confusing.
Right. And it's like certain topics, like with my female friends, I don't get into detail talking about like sexual fantasies or incompatibilities in bed or anything like that.
It feels like that's too far.
Yeah, that feels like that would be crossing a line.
Sure.
You know, and then the other part too, where she was saying that she could tell that he was kind of being a little standoffish, not really wanting to answer questions.
Yeah.
Well, part of that could be because he is now aware that this is bothering her and he doesn't want to upset her.
Sure.
But also, I mean, it kind of sounds like either that or he's hiding something. That could go either way.
So let me weigh in on some of this. And I appreciate those thoughts. I think it's candid. I think it's honest. My take on it is, frankly, yes. Is my husband having an emotional affair? Yes. I think this is the definition of what I understand an emotional affair to be. Where I see the writer getting confused as she says, well, hold on. Like, when I ask him, are you sexually attracted to her? He says no. So therefore, none of this can be real. That is a misconception about how relationships work. There's a great book out there called His Needs, Her Needs. And, you know, it has flaws, but I think it provides a really interesting conversation starter. And in the book, it identifies 5 different areas that each gender specifically tends to have. These are just patterns. These are need categories that if they are unmet, a person will begin looking to meet that need somewhere else. And it doesn't matter, you know, how important each need is to them. If you leave one of them uncovered long enough, they will seek outside nourishment of that need. And that will result in what we call an affair. And the word affair means an entanglement of intimacy with somebody other than your partner, right? That's what it is. It doesn't matter the nature of that. But when the author talks about his needs, the male needs, he talks about 5 of them. Some of them are obvious, but I'm going to read them all. The first one is sexual fulfillment. The second one is recreational companionship, which means like the ability to enjoy your mate, play with them, go out and do things, feel like you have fun together. The third thing is being attractive, so he needs the sense that his mate is attractive. The fourth is domestic support, which can mean just feeling like being near her is safe and she makes my world homey in a sense. Doesn't mean like decorates the walls, but it means like I feel supported by her in a human home base kind of sense. And the last one is affirmation, which a lot of people don't understand. That is a male need, and a lot of men need affirmation. And what's interesting is there's a quiz you can take that actually tells you what is your primary, secondary, third, fourth, fifth needs? And you look at these like, how long can you go without this being met before you'll look for it elsewhere? And ironically, most of the men that I've done this quiz with, you'd think that their first need is going to be sexual fulfillment, or maybe their first need is going to be knowing my mate's attractive. It's usually affirmation. Usually men tend to say, as they do the whole review, it's feeling like I'm admired and feeling like I'm respected and thinking my mate actually thinks I'm a catch, like that's really
That doesn't
valuable.
surprise me at all, actually.
Right, but it surprises a lot of women because women think, men are these strong guys. They don't care what anybody think, but they like attractive women and they like having sex. That is a great image that we have managed as a franchise to put out there. But men are actually terribly fragile and they have very gentle egos. And so they need this affirmation. So comparing the 5 needs to this story, to the writer, I see in this scenario that your husband is seeking affirmation and recreational companionship from somebody else. And that is beginning to create a situation in which she is meeting an outside need. And so he is leaving the relationship to meet a need. Now, is he a criminal? Should you break up with him? Not necessarily. But let's call this what it is. There are emotional components of your life that she is now meeting. In Nick's scenario, he's talking about when a friend has a need, I am being a good friend and assisting them with their problem. That's like if you're good at fixing cars and somebody calls you and says, my brakes are broken, you come over and help them. I spent 10 hours at their house, but I was fixing something, right? That's different than this guy seeking nourishment from this person perpetually. He is having something in his life addressed by his relationship with her. And the fact that that relationship is now including conversations about sexual fantasy, incompatibilities, here's my problems at home, that's beginning to tell me, and this is what Nick's referring to as red flags, that's showing me that this is now becoming more and more intimate, more and more familiar. But what a lot of people don't understand is that an affair doesn't have to be sexual for it to occur. I had a couple once where the guy would come home every day and he'd play video games. He'd get on his Xbox and he'd play video games, and these were online. He ended up suddenly and very quickly leaving his wife, and she was blown away. And she's like, oh my gosh, we're getting a divorce. What's going on? He says, I've fallen in love with somebody else. She says, who could you have possibly fallen in love with? You come home every day. You don't talk to anybody else. What are you talking about? He fell in love with somebody he was playing video games with. There was a female who lived down the street, and they found each other online, and they would play the same video games. And over the time of that relationship, she was meeting his recreational companionship need. Every day he looked forward to talking to her, to playing with her. That was his friend. And he slowly fell in love with her. Even though the other needs were being met by his wife, that one need wasn't. And so he outsourced it. And over time, that created the emotional entanglement that led to an actual affair and led to him actually divorcing his wife and pursuing that other relationship. Now, whether that worked out or not, I don't know. But I know that that was enough to break the dam and have the water spill out.
Right. Well, now that we've scared the living hell out of our listener,
yeah,
what advice do you have for her?
So I would okay. So I think that you're starting to engage your husband, and you're saying, "Hey, I am uncomfortable with this. Let's discuss it." I would honestly, I would recommend the book "His Needs, Her Needs." I really would. I believe it's by Dr. Harley, and I would recommend picking it up because it discusses in depth how feminine and masculine needs exist and how we as a couple sometimes just think, well, I'm just going to deal with, having sex with you or whatever. But to actually discuss what are my needs, how does this coworker, this ex-coworker somehow touch some of these needs? And if I'm your wife, I want to be the one that addresses these needs. If you have a friend on the outside, fine, but that should look an awful lot more like a friendship than you're dating. Right. And right now, by all appearances, it looks like an emotional affair. So being able to label that, call that what it is without being accusatory, having a shared definition of what that means, having a basic text like his needs, her needs to reference together and have a discussion about it is important. But coming back to this, the husband is now defensive.
Right.
There's a reason for that. Another thing they talk about in the book is love capital. Think about it like a bank account. Over time, this other person had a zero balance. And now as she conversates with him more and more and enjoys him more and more and affirms him more and is there for him more and he tells his secrets to her more and more, she's earning an account balance in his love bank. And so dollar by dollar, her account's going up. If the day comes that she has a higher account than you, or it is comparable, he will have a divided allegiance in his heart. Because through no fault of his own, it will appear to him, somehow he has real feelings for this other person, and they actually matter to him. And it will feel like betrayal to ask him to put that person aside and focus only on you. So that love bank concept is there because your balance could be going up and down, and this other person's balance is only going up because they don't have any real world responsibilities to him to actually have crises and put him down or whatever, let him down. So it's a dangerous crisis. I would want to get ahead of it. I want to challenge you guys to take a look at that book together and have a frank and honest conversation about, does this person have an account in your love bank? Are you willing to challenge that with me? Because if your account is still much higher than theirs, he's probably willing to talk to you. But if he's already starting to have divided allegiance, this may get to the place where you guys need to invite a therapist into this.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Hard truth, tough talk.
Yep.
But also, it doesn't help to be accusatory. It doesn't help to get out there and, just say, oh my gosh, you're a villain. You've done these terrible things. But it is fair for you to talk about your truth. This hurts me. This emotionally touches me. And I want to have it change. And I think that this is something that you can address. So I encourage you to do that. Get out there and talk about it. And if you're out there today as a listener and you suspect that maybe you've encountered an emotional affair, or even how the phone impacts this, what is an affair these days? If you're always talking to the same couple of people online, and what does that look like? That's a fair question to ask. And I strongly encourage you to write into the show. Let us take an examinative approach to it. And if we can, we'll give you some honest feedback, and hopefully it's helpful.
Definitely. Thanks for writing in.
Very good. All right, that's all the time we've got for this week's session. Thank you to those who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, pod therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by sharing this episode. You can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy or on Twitter @podtherapyguys.
Do you have any advice you'd like to give to today's questions? Post your thoughts at podtherapy.net and join the conversation. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I'm Jim Jobin.
Thanks, and we'll see you for your appointment next week.